Assassin's Creed 3 was a game that I relatively enjoyed. I finished it probably faster than the other titles in the series, though I mostly attribute that to because I was young and on summer break, so time was all I had. I thought it had plenty of strong points to it, and any weak points weren't enough to destroy my overall experience. It's not my favorite title in the series, but it's a good one nonetheless. Still, I was a bit intrigued to find out that one of the biggest gripes some players had with Assassin's Creed 3 was actually the main character, Connor Kenway. There are plenty of arguments to support the two sides of this topic. Is Connor Kenway a good character or a bad character? In my eyes, I liked Connor. I thought he was a great character and he fit fairly well into a story and his place in the franchise. I think ultimately he's unfairly compared to other characters that simply just had different lives and stories, and that it swayed opinions towards Connor. Connor is the right fit for his story, and I felt like he exhibited some fairly decent development that made his character enjoyable to experience Assassin's Creed 3 with. Assassin's Creed 3 released back in 2012 and took place during the time of the American Revolution. The main character and assassin was Connor Kenway, a Native American living during the time of the American Revolution, of course. Now, Connor is not his real native name, but I'm going to be honest here and say I don't really know how to pronounce his Native American name, no matter how hard I try, so I'm just going to put it up on the screen for you all to see what it is. Anyways, just a warning that this video will contain some spoilers for the story of Assassin's Creed 3, otherwise I really couldn't do this analysis. Connor was young when he was first exposed to the violence of the world. At the beginning of his story, we see his village was attacked and his mother was killed during the siege. He also comes face to face with who would be his future adversary, Charles Lee. Now, this is where the first important piece of the story comes in. Charles Lee is a character who Connor obviously resents. Connor believes Charles Lee is responsible for the death of his mother and basically the destruction of his home and his life, which are some pretty big things to place on a person. With this, we have a good foundation for why Connor would want to get his revenge and join the assassins later on. However, what I think is the main problem with this is that Connor isn't really dedicated to the Creed like a character such as Altair or Ezio were in their later years. Connor was mostly there to just get revenge and kill Charles Lee. Still, one could counter that and say that really no Assassin's Creed protagonist was an entirely perfect addition to the Creed. After all, Altair literally broke every tenet at the very beginning of the game. Ezio was there because he initially wanted to get revenge against the people that killed his family. The two assassins eventually grew to embrace the Creed, but they had to grow into that, and it basically took us quite a few games to see that unfold. Connor really didn't get that much time to pan his story out. Another thing to note about Connor is that for the most part, he stuck to what he believed very steadfastly, and that does make him come off as stubborn and hard-headed. There is nothing wrong with making a character stubborn, but Connor kind of remained stubborn. He largely just remained the same, and that impacted the fact that his character development was limited in the main story. However, you could easily argue it was Altair's stubbornness and arrogance that spurred on the events of Assassin's Creed back in 2007, so stubbornness is not that shocking to have in an Assassin's Creed character. I mean, Altair was pretty much arrogant and hard-headed as well. He was raised in the Brotherhood of Assassins and trained to kill since he was young. Altair was the youngest master assassin in his group, and he had a lot going for him. His pride was one of the reasons why he fell down hard at the beginning of the game. I think where Connor and Altair differ in this scenario is that Altair did have some level of positive growth from this compared to Connor. Connor pretty much had nobody. His mother was dead, his father was a Templar that essentially abandoned him, and the only real support he had was basically just through Achilles. Other than that, nobody really helped Connor in his growth as a person. He became stoic as a reaction to the trauma. He's not very good at interacting with other people. This doesn't make him bland or flat, it makes him socially awkward, which isn't a bad trait to showcase in a character. I think it's better to see a variety and diversity of personality types in Assassin's Creed, because it shows that different people from all walks of life have the capability of taking on the mantle of the Creed and upholding its values. Connor is a very human character. He makes plenty of mistakes and he's trying to learn about the world around him. However, I go back to the point I made earlier about him being stubborn. Although he's a very human character, his stubbornness does make it difficult for him to grow sometimes. He pursues what he wants and does this very intensely. Although Charles Lee is not really the biggest evil in his life, he still equates Lee with his trauma. It's actually pretty interesting to see though. Connor's relationships are also pretty rough. Just analyzing the basically non-existent relationship he has with his father, Connor Kenway, it's a difficult scenario. I'm sure Connor probably wished his father was in his life, only to later find out that his father was a Templar leader and essentially his true worst enemy. Still, we didn't really get to know about Connor's reaction to this information. The player simply has to accept that Connor must kill Haytham without much of a visual display to the player as to how it made Connor feel to find out. It was just kind of told to us. If you haven't watched my other videos before, I'm actually an author and I specialize in military sci-fi and also dark fantasy. So if you'd like to check out my books, I always make sure they're the first link in the description below. With that being said, I took quite a few creative writing courses in my life, and one of the first and most important things that's hammered in creative writing is the concept of show, don't tell. Basically, when a writer like myself tries to describe the world, a character's personality, their feelings, etc., I have to ensure I'm not just outright telling the reader things. I have to subtly show that through things such as interactions, descriptions, and more. Assassin's Creed 3 did a tell rather than show when Connor went to the homestead. This unfortunately disconnected the player and took a lot away from Connor's story that should have been included. Had the story showcased more of Connor's growth when he was younger, I think players would have given more justification as to why Connor was more stoic. However, we certainly did get shown a lot of Connor's interactions with his father that added more depth to the story. From necessity, Connor had to work with Haytham, and when it came time for Connor to kill Haytham, anybody can understand the immense pain and difficulty that it takes for a son to quite literally kill his own father. I mean, that's one of the most difficult positions I think any of the assassins has been put through in this series. Arno certainly didn't have to kill his family, Altair didn't, Ezio didn't. Connor was a young man who was pretty much tossed into the harsh realities of the world without much support, and he still had to stomach and go through with killing his father. He probably had the hardest task in the series to accomplish, and he did it because at the end of the day, Haytham chose his ideology over his own son. And yet, to note, Connor was willing to spare him, but Haytham refused to back down. I feel like I could go on for a while analyzing the dynamic between these two and the idea of ego, pride, and parental relationships, but I think I would be doing a dissertation level analysis at that point, and I'm sure you're not here for that. I think genuinely when you analyze the situations and scenarios Connor was placed in, and the character development he received, he's not a bad character. I actually really like the way Connor was written. The writers understood how to develop his personality well in his actions, his dialogue, and his reactions. Yes, he was stubborn, yes, he was hard-headed, but Connor went through a lot for his entire life. I mean, he was nearly executed and still managed to make it out alive. Connor was a great character, and I think it's unfair to say he's a bad character. I think he just needed more time to get his story panned out better, but other than that, Connor was well written, funny, had his own personality, and made sense at the end of the day for his story. His stubbornness and stoicism makes sense, considering what he'd been through. His relationship with his father helped to show how Connor sees the need to react in difficult situations. At the end of the day, Connor made Assassin's Creed 3 an enjoyable experience. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed that video, feel free to leave a like and comment below what you think about Connor and Assassin's Creed 3 in general. Don't forget to subscribe with notifications set to all, it's just an easy way to support the channel. Also, check out my military sci-fi series and my newspaper, the links to those are in the description below. Thanks again, and until next time, Symbiosis out.